Hello CTE students, I'm going to do a quick demo on how we retouch for our fashion photos. So what I'm going to do is grab this photo in Adobe Bridge. I'm of course going to right click or control click and make a duplicate copy of it. I'm just going to change the name to say V2 at the end just to keep track of my different versions, so my before and after. I'm going to open this straight into Photoshop. So what I want to do is when we move the light, it does show more of the creases and folds on the background. So what we're going to do is first duplicate our layer. And with the newer versions of Photoshop, if you click on the quick selection tool, you can click on select subject. So when you click select subject, it should do pretty well because your subject is on a clean background. So I made a pretty good selection. You can zoom in, press Command plus. And if you kind of miss stuff, you'll see there's a plus and minus here. You can add or subtract from your selection depending on how well it did. And so you can add or remove pieces. But we can also clean it up later with Refine Mask. So once we have our selection pretty good, I'm just going to click Add a Layer Mask here on the bottom right. So just below your layer is that little kind of rectangle with the circle. So that's going to show it cut out. So obviously it looks the same because it's still showing the layer underneath. So I'm going to click on the layer underneath. And what we're going to do is we're going to sample a light color of the background. I'm going to switch this and click on the box and sample a dark color of the background. And so that way we can literally create a nice clean fake background. So I'm just going to go to Edit, Fill. And you can choose between the foreground color or the background color. So the one on top is the foreground, the one on the bottom is the background. So I'm going to fill with the foreground color, which is the light color. So I could leave it like this, but it doesn't look super natural. So what I'm going to do is switch this to the background color that I sampled. I'm going to use my gradient tool. So again, if you're not sure which tool, just kind of hover over each of them. So this is the gradient tool. You want to make sure your gradient tool is set to a solid color to clear, so the kind of solid to the checkered box. And if I have it set to this first one, if I drag it over, it's going to go from the dark to clear, right? So I can, adjust that if I need to, just to kind of give it a little bit more 3-dimension. And then what I can do to make this even look more real is add a little bit of noise. So go to Filter, Noise, Add Noise. And just adding about 1% noise will help to kind of give it a little bit more texture. So as you can tell, it's still kind of cut them out weird. So I'm just going to go back to my layer mask. So don't click on the layer, but the actual layer mask here. I'm going to click on the quick selection tool. And we want to click this selected mask option. And with the selected mask, I'm going to click on the Refine Edge Brush tool. And so that's going to do what it says. It's going to refine the edge of the selection. So I'm just going to kind of paint over, especially the hair. Usually has a hard time cutting that out first try. So again, you just want to kind of go over the edge and help Photoshop kind of understand what it is it's cutting out. And so the more you go over it, the more it'll help Photoshop understand where the edge is on the thing you're trying to cut out. Sometimes it will get wrong and it will cut stuff off, but you can paint it back with a brush once we get back into the normal screen. I'm just going to get it here. So I'm just going around the subject. And then once I've encompassed the subject, I can adjust it further, so I can shift the edge in or out, kind of cut in or cut out. It looks pretty good, so I'm just going to hit OK. And so it did much better with the hair, But if there is areas where it kind of cuts in to your subject weird, again, you can get a paintbrush and then make sure you select it on the layer mask. And so white will show, black doesn't show. So if it kind of cut in too much, you could paint with a white brush. I'll bring up my flow. And then you can kind of paint some stuff back with the white brush. And if it messes up, you can switch that to black and then paint it off with black. So again, white shows, black doesn't show. So once I'm happy with my background, another couple things we could do on our fashion photos. So I'm just going to go Layer, Flatten Image. So layer, flatten new layers. And then I'm just going to duplicate my layer again. And so I'm going to show you the liquefy tool. And this is for shaping, a lot of things, but also like clothing. So I'm going to go to filter, liquefy. A lot of fashion companies use this to shape the clothing so it looks correct. And so if you go up here on the forward warp tool, so the forward warp basically means you can push and pull things like a finger, right? So you can literally like, shape how the jacket is. Sometimes people want things to like fit perfectly on the model, and so you kind of need to adjust that. You can also, play with the volume of the hair, right, and shape hair and all kinds of stuff. So there's different tools in here. If you mess up, there's the reconstruct tool, and so if you paint over that area, you can reconstruct it, go back, and then correct it. There is a pucker tool which will suck in, and there's a blow tool which will puff out. There's a twirl tool as well. So there are different options here. The main one to use is the forward warp tool when you're kind of shaping things, and so everything fits the way you want it to. There's also over here face aware, and so you can change the eye size, eye height, eye width, eye tilt, eye distance, nose, mouth, face shape, right? So there's this face aware liquefy option. I'm not going to mess with that right now, but I'm just going to hit OK. So it's going to commit my liquefy. So again, it's before and after. You can see the difference. So if I'm happy with that, I'm just going to go layer, flatten image. And the last thing you can think about is working on a new layer. So layer, duplicate layer is cleaning up the clothing or the model. So using the spot healing brush tools or the clone stamp tool and zooming in, and there might be creases on the clothing. So sometimes you could use that, other times you can use a clone stamp brush. So I set mine to like a lower flow, and you can kind of like blend off stuff. Get rid of some of those creases, right? So I'm literally just cloning at a low flow. And obviously we do have the spot removal, and so I can get rid of blemishes or spots that are temporary. And so then, once you're kind of happy with the image, you can go layer, flatten image, and then go save as, and just make sure it is the same V2. It's a JPEG format. You're saving in the right folder. Hit save and replace, and then hit OK on the quality. And so then, if I go back to Bridge, here's my before and after, right? So cleaning the background, and then selecting out the subject, using that liquefy tool, and then cleaning up the model. And again, you can do global adjustments. So if you have it open, you can always work on a new layer and go to filter and then camera raw filter. So if you want to do any like global adjustments, like in camera raw, you can open it. So maybe you want to line up the shadows a little bit, maybe lower some of the texture and the clarity just to kind of smooth it up. Sometimes I like to add a little grain just to kind of give it a little texture, and obviously adjust my my exposure and maybe my colors, saturation, color temperature, right? I could also add a vignette, and I could apply that. So maybe I'm really happy with how this looks. I'm going to hit OK. And so then I just did some global changes in camera raw. So I'm just going to go layer, flatten image. Always flatten your layers before you save, and then file save, and I'll update the file. So then if I go back to Bridge, right, there's my updated file and my V2. So, all right, guys, thanks for watching.